think one of the greatest challenges that many spiritual seekers, myself included, keep experiencing throughout their journey, it is feeling stuck in the space between insight and embodiment. And I like to think of that place as the space of being half awake. It's like you're aware of a highest truth and you're not fully living it yet because of many, many reasons that we're going to explore. But it's a space where you cannot unknow what you know, and at the same time, there's an aspect of you that is not yet ready to fully live that highest truth. So in a way, the downward journey of truth is interrupted, probably somewhere here. The conscious choice, the full blooded, fully embodied conscious choice to commit to that truth, whatever truth it might be, hasn't been made yet. Maybe because there are some fears associated to it. There is a form of an internal split that is preventing you from committing more fully to that truth, whatever it is. And maybe let's take some examples here so that it is not an elusive conversation. So let's say you've been wanting to have more beautiful relationships in your life, and you start realizing that some of the patterns that you attribute to your personality are actually coming from ancient pain that hasn't been fully resolved. So when often you say you are setting a boundary, you might be fueling an avoidant tendency that is anchored in some ancient pain that hasn't been resolved, and it may be coming from a deeper intention to protect yourself from experiencing any form of rejection, or a deeper intention to protect yourself from a perceived loss of autonomy, a desire to control the outcome when you are leaning into even more intimacy. That's just an example. So the higher truth may land, and you may receive the perception of, like, oh, I've been afraid of getting hurt. This is not just a personality trait. This is not just an aspect of, it's an aspect of who you are, but this is not the essence. It's not the essence. And you start realizing, okay, down deep, there is a part of me that craves more intimacy and connection. But becoming aware of that truth comes at a cost. Let's say you're going to have to expose yourself to the possibility of being rejected in ways that you don't want to feel rejected, or feeling rejected in ways that you don't want to experience anymore. Maybe let's have it framed that way. So, and beneath that, there might even be another higher truth, which is, hey, there is a subtle inner rejection of the part of you that felt this pain before. And with that, there might be an even higher truth, which is an invitation for deeper integration, an invitation for a deeper reclamation of your own wholeness. And you may even know that intellectually, but again, with regards to this specific matter, there might be resistance in there with having the highest truth be fully lived. So, again, that's an example of how we get stuck in that space between insight and embodiment. And that's something that, we can experience so many times along the journey. What I find really fascinating about truth, it is psychologically radioactive. And I'm not kidding. It is psychologically radioactive, like emotionally radioactive. This is a little bit of a tangent, but I'm inviting you to bear with me for a second. And just like the sheer power of truth. Let's take an example that is a little weird. It's a little far-fetched, but I see it as a potent example. The very moment we start realizing collectively, and this is an example that I take a little bit from Carolyn Myss. She often talks about the the collective realization that we have that we are capable of now splitting the atom and the power that it liberates. Just think about it for a second. One of the most one of the smallest components of life, of physical life, that we call the atom, we are able to split it. And there is such huge, massive, energetic explosion that comes from it. Massive. Huge. So that newfound awareness creates a psychological ripple that on a cellular level makes people feel like, holy shit, we are capable of so much damage just by becoming aware of a higher truth of how to split the atom, something like that. And here's where I'm going with that. When it comes to our inner processes, truth is that powerful. It is so freaking powerful. And deep down, we know that it's radioactivity of the truth. What it's going to shatter, it is the way you relate to life. It will literally take the ancient templates you are relying onto, and it will go nuclear on them. And deep down, we feel it, we sense it, and that's the reason why we have this collective aversion to truth. That's the reason why people we perceive as truth tellers usually will get a bad rap. That's the reason why, the black sheep is often the one that is outcasted, because sometimes the black sheep is presenting a truth that the tribe is not yet willing to look into, to look at. So now going back to this conversation, what I want to get at is the highest invitation of truth itself when it goes through that downward spiral, because it desires to be anchored, it desires to be lived, it desires to be embraced, and it desires that we start exploring and dissolving all the rationalizations we created to reject it. That's what it does. I often like to say, light, the purpose of light is to illuminate truth. And then, as soon as we've seen it, we are unable to unsee it. And then the purpose of truth is to unchain us from falsehood. So, the highest invitation now, it is learning the technology of surrender, which is another difficult thing to do, because when you are half awake, basically you have one foot in the world you've outgrown and another foot in the world that you're claiming to embrace or in what you want to become. And with time, I think this is such a somatically difficult thing to experience, because it is a reflection of the inner split. And holding the split is really, really difficult. It is really challenging. The energy invested in resisting allowing that truth to fully take over you is a huge degree of energy. It is a huge amount of energy. And because that energy is not being harnessed for co-creation, that's the reason why we often feel depleted. So one of the questions that I like to ask people here, it is not to dismiss the resistance, but to lean into the resistance in there, because to me that's the first step of actually engineering not just surrender here, but submission. I don't think truth wants just surrender anymore. And because and let me put it this way. Surrender can be a hell of a confusing word. Surrender, allowing, they're beautiful words. And they, I don't know, to me they can feel very much elusive. Submission is something that we understand. You know, think about relational dynamics when, we talk about the game of leading and submitting and things like that. Submission is something that we understand viscerally. If you've been a practitioner of any martial arts and you've ever been submitted, when jiu-jitsu, for example, when you really sense that you're being stretched and that joint is being stretched to the point where if you don't submit right there, something invaluable might get hurt. And sometimes these are the places where life needs to bring us so that we can really, I don't even call it surrender anymore. To me, it's submission. And what is being put into submission? It's the pride, the ego, the the inner shadow rebel that sees truth and says no. But before we can get to the place of surrender slash submission, I feel like we can begin to engineer it by asking a question that usually we don't like to ask, which is the ways in which my attachment to the old world is still serving me is, and embrace that with a radical degree of honesty. What comes up for you? What emerges there? I think we have this collective. This is collective. It's not just like for spiritual seekers. I think with the emergence, the explosion of information out there, that's another form of nuclear explosion of information and a lot of spiritual information out there. We have a collective crisis of being half awake. And with that, it's important to ask my attachment to the old world, what that is serving is, and become aware. And the wounds that I am attempting to protect, the responsibilities that feel overwhelming, what needs to be allowed to go through the entire cycle of decomposition, of death, decomposition, and now rebirth is. The identities that are so obsolete, to the point where I need to review them or release them. These identities are. These are questions in there that are so important to ask. It's so important to lean in there in the best of your ability to explore the resistance, because knowing isn't the same as living. And this is something that I've experienced many times and I catch myself doing so many times. Knowing is not the same as living. Being half awake is not being awake. It is being in this transient state where you are still in between worlds. And the question is, what do you want to submit to? What do you want to create? And are you willing to not just commit, but submit? It's different. It's different. Even in commitment, there's a form of submission. And I think this is the angle of surrendering to a highest truth that most people don't like to look at. We like to look at it from the very empowered place of like, I'm choosing this. And yes, you are. Yes, you are. But to a certain degree, there's the humility of submission. It's like accepting, I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what I don't know. And I'm willing to find out. And when you do that, the gap stops widening. When you do that, the inflammation that you carry inside of yourself because of the fragmentation, it starts resolving. When you do that, you're no longer engaging with the world from a place of trying to protect the wound or the part of you that is not yet ready for truth. When you do that, you start actually shifting from a place of, instead of rejecting truth and being afraid of how it might shift your life, you start microdosing it. I think that's the most powerful kind of microdosing we can do. Microdosing truth, microdosing submission to these truth, especially microdosing the undesirable truths. One thing that I've seen over and over again, it doesn't matter where somebody feels stuck, where I feel stuck. What I've seen in these areas where I feel stuck, it's usually because there is an undesirable truth that I am not willing to have shift. First, even be aware of, and then the second step is to let that truth move from awareness to embodiment. To a certain degree, I know some of that is going on. To a certain degree, I know I'm not fully allowing it. To a certain degree, I know that I might not be open to knowing, because I know that with knowing comes the downward spiral. So, a solid question to ask yourself when you pay attention to areas in your life where you've been feeling sluggish, not necessarily stuck, but where you've been feeling that the upgrade is not coming in as gracefully, powerfully as it could. Because it's not just about feeling stuck here. It might just be about feeling that there's an upgrade afoot. There is something that wants to be birthed, and it requires a shift in awareness. Not just a shift in awareness, but also a deeper willingness to let truth have its way with you, whatever that truth is. Think about how freaking vulnerable that is. That's the reason why I'm talking about submission. And this is you might say, more of the feminine aspect of transformation, which is I submit to that truth. Fuck, this is vulnerable. Because you have no freaking guarantees, and truth doesn't want to give you guarantees. That's freaking vulnerable. So the key part is to shift from this place of being half awake to living embodiment. It requires more and more submission, microdosing submission. And it requires addressing the fragmentation that is keeping you from living embodied truth. And that's the reason why I created Integrate. The purpose of Integrate is to Integrate, by the way, it's a 4-month program that I've started a long time ago. We have the 8th cohort of Integrate that will be starting soon. And the journey is to equip you with the technology of integration. And that alone is something that serves every single area of your life. And what I mean by the technology of integration is, what does it look like to unify all aspects of myself behind the highest truth I can live in this moment? Whether that highest truth for you is serving in a new way, showing up in your work in a new way, or bringing more of your own magic to the world in a new way that is more integrated, not in a way that is performative, in a way that honors your essence. That's a key aspect of the work of integration. It is essence. Because at the core, if you look at the root of integration, integer, it's whole. It is one. And the thing is, as human beings, we are so complex that sometimes we operate from fragmented selves. And your will is split. And if your will and intention is split, therefore your vibration is split. Your energy is split. It is hard to be in that frequency of pure intent, which is the most powerful tool we have. When you are able to bring more of who you are, behind one intention. It's like that. Talk about laser beam of light on steroids. I've had these moments in my life where, all of who I am, or at the very least, what feels like all of who I am, is single focused on one thing. It is freaking unshakable. And I'm not talking about living from that idea of perfection, because I'm a big fan of shining your light imperfectly. Big fan of it. But it's knowing the technology to bring all the splits together so that the you can operate more harmoniously. This is what allows me to, I don't know, do the work I do every day. With sometimes all the ways, I mean, my life feels very rich. I have 3 young kids and I work from home, and usually it feels like life is pulling me in all directions all at once. And my devotion to my work, submission to the work as well, is it's just this beautiful whirlwind with pockets of quiet and peace here and there that I work on crafting. But beyond all of that, what happens is this renewed commitment to aliveness. Because when we are stuck in that space between insight and embodiment, it can feel liveless at times. It can feel devoid of aliveness. And that's something that, at this point in my journey, I don't have a lot of tolerance for living in a space of no aliveness. If it happens, I'll deal with it. I have moments of low. I'll deal with it. You know, I'll learn how to be with it. I'll accept myself into it. But I am not going to stay in a low because of a refusal to meet myself more fully. So that's the message. That's the what's at the core of Integrate. It is to create from a more heart-led space, whether it's in your work, in leadership, in relationships. What does it look like for you to apply that technology of integration, bringing all aspects of you together so that you can dissolve all forms of self sabotage, so that you can live more aliveness, so that you can have joy, feel safe in your cells, so that you can give yourself permission to shine your light imperfectly, so that you can bring more of your aliveness in all areas of your life instead of living a life where you are constantly guarded. And sometimes, yes, it's important to have our boundaries, and sometimes it's important to shield your energy. But I have a feeling, I keep experiencing that a heart unleashed is one of the most powerful protections you'll ever have. And the beauty of that is it does not disrupt your capacity to feel joy and aliveness. That's the intention of Integrate. So if this is something that is calling you, I'm inviting you to check that out. And we are starting the journey really soon, and we are creating really small cohorts, so that we can give to them, to every single one that joins in, the best of the experience possible. It's 4 months of like in-depth transformation, 4 months of like in-depth rewiring, and also 4 months of like getting in touch with your golden shadow, which is the light you often keep in the dark. So thank you for listening. And I'm curious, have you experienced feeling stuck between insight and embodiment? Or what does it look like for you at this point in your life to begin to microdose more undesirable truth? What does it look like to microdose submitting to truth? So, not surrendering, even though submission includes surrendering, but submission, I feel like it's more visceral. It's like more visceral, it's more full blooded, and it kind of humbles you. Submission humbles you. Surrender can sometimes feel like, you know, oh, I'm allowing it to a certain degree. Like sometimes some pride can camouflage a little bit in there. Submission will not take you to your knees, but it will take you to the ground. Will get you in touch with it. And that's what makes it really powerful. So let me know what you think about it. I'm so curious to hearing your thoughts. Share them in the comment section. Go check out Integrate. I'd love to get in touch with you and to hear from you. If you feel resonant in the journey of Integrate, there is a way to get in touch to see if that journey really resonates with you. And if you're full-blooded, yes, it would be a pleasure to get in there and to work with you. I'm looking forward to connecting soon. Thank you.